off as a PG podcast, but then Devin just kept on dropping shits and fucks, and
I'm just trying to figure out what's in her mouth.
I just want to see him interview Francesco Accoli.
Oh, he's a good human being, is what he would say about himself, I'm sure.
Who's hosting this thing?
Take charge, Kevin, would you? Jesus.
First time we ever met those guys. That was the major drunken pub argument.
I think you guys are the worst.
I'm going to have to probably watch some Canucks hockey, unfortunately.
Just making friends left, right, and center, and probably some enemies as well.
Tell him to shut up. He needs to hear that every once in a while.
Off to a good start.
All right. We are live.
It's okay to talk when it goes live.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hockey Podcast. You can, of course, follow us on Twitter at podcast_hockey, as well as you live on Facebook, facebook.com, the Hockey Podcast, youtube.com, the Hockey Podcast, as well as you can subscribe to wherever you get your podcasts, as it is sort of a pregame show as the Winnipeg Jets will be taking on the Edmonton Oilers here very shortly. And of course, just to give you an update, we are currently at the I've 72 subscribers. I usually go by NHL jersey numbers. And who's number 72? Hang on. 72. The best player to ever wear 72 would be... Anyway, that's where we are. Don is here. Hello.
Hello, Kevin. How are you?
I'm good. Had a little bit of an afternoon nap, so maybe just getting a little bit acclimatized. Devin will be joining us, but we're sort of in the mid-season here, which is hard to believe after everything that happened. And after 29 games, 18-9-2 for 38 points are the Winnipeg Jets, 2 points behind the Toronto Maple Leafs, and tied with the Edmonton Oilers for second place. Some guy on this podcast had the Winnipeg Jets in second place in this division. Others laughed at him. But our guest today is from the Locked On Jets podcast. He is UMD grad, lover of Jets and Caps hockey. Well, he's got some quality there. Writer for Article Hockey and Fear the Wall. Harrison L. joins us. How's it going, Harrison?
Good. Thanks for having me on. Happy to join you fine folks.
Yes. So for those who don't know you, just tell us a little bit about how one becomes a lover of Jets and Caps hockey.
So I'll say, for one thing, I'm primarily a Jets fan. I just have to kind of endorse the Caps since I'm one of those fans who's definitely not market local to the Jets. So I do live in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm pretty far off the beaten path. And the only reason that I liked the Jets even to begin with was ages ago when I was younger, I would see like Atlanta Thrashers highlights on YouTube. And I always thought, this team is not that great. I don't know that much about hockey, but they're kind of fun. They had that guy Kovalchuk scoring plenty of goals back in the day before he ended up going for what he thought was greener pastures. But I kind of stopped after a while, forgot the Thrashers existed. And then I found out the Winnipeg Jets were a thing around 13, 14, 15. I was like, you know what? I'll see what this team is like. The roster didn't really look all that familiar. So I just sort of started following along. And that was the first year the Jets actually made the postseason. I think it was 2014-15. Of course, that was a rather bitter playoff performance, but I just fell in love with the way that they approached hockey at the time. Very smart, very physical, and surprisingly good in so many different categories. So that's how you become a Jets fan when you don't live in Winnipeg.
Fair enough. So from your perspective, from your perspective, kind of tell us what you're seeing with the Jets. What is working with the Jets right now? Why are they at 18-9-2 so far this year?
Oh, the Jets. So this is one of those teams that has a very good record, and I think it's doing a good job of masking some unusual issues. I know that most people into the past couple of years have recognized the Jets defense. It's a bit porous. We're kind of down to Josh Morrissey, Neil Pionk, and a few other guys, but we've lost Dustin Byfuglien, Tobias Enstrom, Jacob Trouba, and the Jets just never really found replacements for those guys. And so, the blue line has been a little bit vulnerable. And in a lot of these games, I think if the Jets weren't in the North Division, I think that, the North generally for me this year hasn't been super defensive. So there's like a lot of high scoring games. Very fun, I'll have to say that. But as far as like the Jets are concerned, I think Connor Hellebuck and some of their really elite goal scoring ability has kind of been hiding the fact that the Jets, in a lot of these games that they're winning, they're kind of getting outplayed. It's not been a particularly clean year so far. There have maybe been 4 or 5 games where I'm like, yes, they deserve to win 100%. And the rest are kind of like teetering on the verge of disaster at all times. But I mean, it's been a fun ride, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, it certainly has. And I agree with you in terms of how high scoring it's been. And it's fascinating to kind of see. I mean, one of the teams we follow here that have won 7 in the last 9, and nobody's going to say that they've played super well. And there's some in the fan base that are not very happy that they've won 7 in the last 9, but we'll get to that a little bit later on. In terms of defense, though, you mentioned Josh Morrissey, Neil Pionk, but as one saying, how that defense has been kind of structured. I know it doesn't look good, and maybe in other divisions, you're right, it wouldn't be top notch, but they seem to have found a way to finagle their way through there a little bit, haven't they? Or are we just lucky?
So the Jets are kind of a funny team. In the past, in 2017-18, when they had that cup run, Paul Maurice and the coaching staff really trusted that defense. And so they let them do their thing. They dropped inside the offensive zone very deep. They supported the forwards. Past couple of seasons, they know that the team is not so good. And so they've been really conservative. They don't really do a whole lot to support the forwards. And when they try to defend inside their own end, it's often a bit of a mess. Josh Morrissey this year, I don't know what's happened over the past couple of seasons, but the guy he was when Trouba was around and the guy he is now, they're like not even close to the same player. He's probably one of the worst blue liners on the team, and it's crazy to say that. I don't know what happened, but he just seems, I don't know, he just always seems slow. It's weird. Neil Pionk ended up being like apparently a gem. I was real suspicious of that trade when that kind of occurred with Trouba, but Pionk's he's doing about as well as you could ask anyone on this team. Very offensively active. His defensive reads have gotten a lot better. He definitely tries hard. He's like a short guy, so he kind of throws himself at plays all the time. He actually challenged, I think, somebody to a fight the other day. I don't even know who it was, but the guy probably had a good 1.5 feet on him, so I don't know if that would have gone super well. But I think the Jets D, to a point, are really struggling to do a lot of these simple things like clearing the puck out, and the Jets have tried to compensate for that. Sometimes it works better than others. I think Connor Hellebuck continues to be a huge reason why we just don't concede that many goals relative to what I'd expect us to. But yeah, I think the Jets are trying to mask a lot of that with the forwards, and it kind of works sometimes not so much.
Sean,
with Morrissey and Pionk, according to Daily Faceoff, Morrissey's on the number 1 power play, while Pionk has been there for the past. He was there last year after they lost Trouba and Byfuglien and Myers. And Pionk's been someone who's been more of a point producing defenseman than Morrissey. What's going on there?
I think in a lot of ways the Jets have tried to use Morrissey as like the number 1 guy. That was the expectation when he signed his contract. I just don't think Josh was ever really prepared for it. And I don't know if he's had like injuries too that are kind of holding him back. There was a time when he was effective on the power play, but I think that time was when he was a little bit fleeter of foot, when he was able to get into good shooting lanes. Nowadays, it just seems like he kind of forces stuff. And a lot of times he's very slow to react. So like the Jets often give up shorthanded chances because he mishandles the puck at the blue line. I'm not really sure why Pionk is now on the second unit. Last year, I wasn't thrilled when he was on the first unit because like he would pass to Laine and it would kind of take forever. And Laine would like try and slap the puck as hard as he could to compensate for it. But Pionk's distribution on the back end kind of iffy, but he's a really good shooter. So I would have made the swap. Personally, I really want to see Ville Hinola because I feel like Hinola, as a top end prospect who's like really skilled at quarterbacking power plays, he's a guy who would help Morrissey out a lot. But I think with the expectation of the contract that he signed, Morrissey's probably not getting moved off that unit for the time being.
You talked a little bit about Connor Hellebuyck. What about, I've been pretty impressed with what Laurent Brossoit has brought. I think obviously this year everyone has needed two goaltenders at some particular point in time. What are your thoughts on Brossoit, and has Hellebuyck kind of getting his game back? Because he felt like at the start of the year he was kind of a little bit inconsistent.
Yeah, so Brossoit's kind of a fun one. When he joined the Jets, I was kind of like, there were two versions of him that I was afraid to see. There was the Oilers version, and he would have a slight improvement and kind of turn back into the pumpkin, or he just wouldn't be good at all. What we actually got was very competent play from him, and there were some folks who suggested that maybe Brossoit, when he was with the Oilers, was better than people realized, because at the time that he was there, the Oilers defense was just kind of a hot mess. So, his numbers didn't look great, but there was potential. Since joining the Jets, he's been very decent at relieving Hellebuyck, and at times he's looked even great. I don't know if he's the kind of goaltender where I sit and think, he'll be somebody's starter long term, but like if you have a platoon, I think he'd be fine as like a 1B. Some of his recent games, his tracking and stuff wasn't as great as it was in previous games, but for Hellebuyck, I think he gave enough pressure. There was a couple of seasons before 2017, 2018 where like Hellebuyck was not looking so sharp, and I think this year is just really tough on everyone because COVID, no skating, no practicing. It's just really difficult for those guys to get into a rhythm. But now it kind of seems like Hellebuck's at least getting there. I still think the defense doesn't really give him a lot of support, especially on the PK. But overall, I think Hellebuyck has definitely found his groove. And I was kind of surprised because a couple of years ago, I wasn't sure. He had the one, Vezina final this season, and then he kind of fell off. And I was like, was that just a one-time thing? Is he going to be the lead guy? But he's kind of taken that mantle back.
Where would you put Hellebuyck in terms of the North goaltenders?
So I probably rank him first. I don't know how many. Demko, if he had a larger sample size and had played more games and was continuously being this good, I think Demko's got an argument up there. With how much Hellebuyck is frequently tested and how much of a workload he carries and how well he does, I think Connor right now just gets the edge. But Demko, I will say, has been very impressive, I thought. If Jacob Markstrom was still there, I would have said Markstrom. Markstrom last year was probably one of the only other guys that I felt really had a shot at challenging Hellebuyck for the Vezina. Not a guy that you would see many votes for, surprisingly, but certainly somebody who I was very impressed with. This year with the goaltending, how it really is kind of like Hellebuyck and then the rest. Demko is definitely going to be up above most of the other rest, but I don't know. The goaltending this year has not been astoundingly great. The North is kind of a little bit iffy.
So speaking of goaltenders, I figured out who number 72 is there, Kev.
It's Sergei Bobrovsky.
Bobrovsky!
That's right. We are at the Bobrovsky of subscribers. By the way, we have a Jets fan in the chat here, and he asks if this is a real question. It's Parallax Prophecy. The answer is yes, actually, because I could make there is probably a legitimate argument, depending on your perspective and where you sit in terms of teams, of who that top goaltender is. Some people would just give that to Carey Price based on legacy factors. Some would give it to Hellebuyck, probably, but I also think that there is a legitimate argument for right now. Honestly, not a hot take. I know the sample size is small, but I might put Thatcher right now today. I would say Thatcher Demko is the number one goaltender in this division, and like today, right now. That doesn't mean that doesn't change, but right now I think Demko is playing the best overall.
Oh yeah. For me, I think Demko is definitely playing the best. In the last in March alone, Vancouver's save percentage is 0.952, and that's basically all Demko. and the next, and then if Hellebuck's been playing really well for the Jets, and as is Brossois, but their team for March, save percentage is .912. So like a full 10th of a percentage, like a lot more actually. But yeah, it's quite the difference. But as Harrison said, and as other people will bring up, it's the sample size with Demko. Tyler would bring up the sample size with Demko as much as, but I think it's I like to with goaltenders. I like to have that tenure. I still give it to Hellebuck, but it's going to be a battle for the rest of the year between those two, in my opinion. And the rest, if they're both playing at the top of their game.
It's kind of fun. It's like if you find the North teams that really struggle defensively the most, find the goaltenders who are putting up pretty good numbers, and there you go. There's probably the strongest performers in the North Division at this point.
Yeah, it's certainly true, and like we've talked about this for a long time. We know that this division has flaws up and down. There's not I don't think there's a true Stanley Cup contender, although one will get to the Final Four. I don't see the Stanley Cup champion coming from the North, but that's a whole other sidebar in that. So there was the big trade. It was Patrick Laine and Jack Roslovic, which I do think was a key piece for Pierre-Luc Dubois. How has Dubois looked, and how is the Jack Roslovic replacement Mason Appleton played in your mind?
So as far as Dubois is concerned, he's probably had a bit of a mixed start. Last night he was fantastic. And he's had a couple of really good games. I think the way that the Jets play is often very confusing for guys who have never played here. What the Jets often do with like a lot of the man zone schemes and stuff, it often just seems to make people very lost. Even the guys who are veterans here, like Scheifele and stuff, sometimes you just watch them skate around and like they have no idea what's going on. And as observers, I think some of us have probably had confusion too. But once Dubois, I think, is starting to settle in and get a better sense of being just this net front, net driving presence like he was last night, points sort of gravitate towards him because he drives into those really dangerous central areas. He's got great hands. He's got a great shot too that I don't think gets a lot of mention, but he doesn't use it as much. I think he's been just somebody who gets himself into the right spaces, and that's kind of his approach. He's almost like a super skilled grinder in a sense. And so I've seen flashes of it. He played like as a left wing for a couple of games, was very good there. And then he got placed on the second line as the center, and it didn't go as well for the first several games. Last night was probably one of his best efforts. But he's been inconsistent, hit or miss. Appleton, dude's a monster. I'll fully confess, like a couple of years ago, I didn't think Appleton was going to be like a particularly special guy. I thought he was like, a third or a fourth line wing, not much beyond that. Dude's offensive game has taken off this year. He's just really smart. He has like a very simple approach. He drives towards the net, but he's got this extra little bit of layer of skill to it. And he's also super defensively responsible. I think that these are all traits that make me think, if they wanted to try him on like the first or second line, I think he could be a huge asset to guys like Scheifele and Wheeler, who probably need a little bit of transition help. So Appleton's been fantastic. He's not quite like the point scoring guy that Roslovic is, but Jack just never really worked out for the way that the Jets play. So Appleton's been a really nice find internally.
How have the Jets missed Laine though?
Yes and no. I think the power play, even with Laine not really scoring as much last year, was still very dangerous. His presence alone is like a huge asset. I think where the Jets would probably miss him is just having that really good finishing presence. But as far as like his absence on the team is concerned, it's hard to say that he's really been super, super missed. I think personally for a lot of us Jets fans, we're very attached to him for, many obvious reasons. The guy is like one of those dudes that he's like a face of the franchise kind of player. But in terms of on the ice performance, I mean, I don't know that it's been, I would like to have his scoring again. I think it would be very helpful at all situations, but it's not like the Jets are crippled without him. It's been, livable, relatively speaking.
Sean?
With going back to defense, one of the Jets' top picks last few years has been Ville Hinola, and he played a few games last season and looked decent during that stint. He hasn't been a full-time player for them this year. What have you seen from him in the games that he has played?
So I've been able to watch some of the Moose games too, and Heinola just sticks out as somebody who is smarter than everyone else. Like they've described Cole Perfetti the same way. Heinola is just a very, very intelligent defender. You can kind of see how he thinks about the ice when he sits on the puck, he evaluates his routes, and then he executes with perfect passing, great skating, but he does it so fast that I think a lot of people don't realize how complicated it is because he makes breakouts and stuff look like it's super easy. And when he's inside the offensive zone, he just makes things happen. I mean, he's a natural playmaker. He kind of, if you made Quinn Hughes like a lot less dynamic and a lot less flashy, I think Heinola kind of thinks about things in a similar manner. He definitely doesn't have like the effortless skating, and the phenomenal shot and stuff, but he's just really effective at what he does. And despite being a smaller guy, he's definitely not afraid to get into the corners. He's somebody who kind of relies on his positioning to understand how to shut down shooting and passing lanes. So he's just very smart is probably the way to think about it.
Yeah, certainly a top prospect there. I guess sticking with defense, there was a question here, like in terms of, obviously this would probably be one of the top priorities for the trade deadline for the Jets would be defense. Of course, one name out there, Matthias Ekholm is out there. Do you see the Jets taking a run at him? Do you see the Jets taking a run at another defenseman? Kind of where are you seeing the Jets in terms of what comes up here on the trading deadline in about a month or so?
Ekholm's a fun one because I feel like Ekholm used to be a guy who was like a really shutdown presence. Over the past couple of seasons, he's become more of like a dude who just seems to bomb it from the point and constantly jump into the play, which is not really how the Jets play all that much. They used to, but they don't as much anymore. I hope, like, if they go back to that with Ekholm, that would be something that they would trust him with. I know that the Nashville Preds have been asking about Sami Niku from the Jets, and Niku's kind of like, he's very talented and he's a fun puck moving D, but he's also somebody who, as far as the Jets are concerned, is a fringe guy. And I think the request was something like the late first rounder for the Jets, Niku, and maybe like another prospect. If the prospects are like not some of the bigger guys like Sandberg and Heinola is definitely an untouchable for the team. Sandberg probably in the same category. If it's like a first, and then Niku and maybe like a Janssen Harkins or something like that, I think the Jets would probably do that, and I'd probably be pretty comfortable with that as well. The only issue is that you don't get that long with Ekholm, so you have to kind of push your chips in a little bit. And like as far as other targets, I think the Jets recently had their assistant GM out in Columbus a couple days ago, which is highly unusual unless they were looking at like a very serious trade. David Savard, I think, was mentioned. Savard would be more of like a defensive presence and somebody that probably wouldn't cost the Jets that much. Either of those guys, I'd be happy if like the price is right, like a first rounder and maybe a lower end prospect, make it happen. Otherwise, I don't know if I want the Jets picking up like 30-year-old guys as much. I'd probably be looking at like a Vincent Dunn, a younger D of some sort.
Where, like, I guess in terms of the North, though, right now, where do you see that the Jets are obviously sitting in second place? They played pretty well against the Maple Leafs recently. They've got Edmonton, as we're recording this, they've got Edmonton for the next series here. Where could you see the Jets winning, like playoff winning the North, finishing first in the North? What, like how, I guess my question would be ultimately, do they need that important trade piece to get to the next level, or do you think they have a chance now?
So in the North, they can definitely finish top three as is. I think that they have enough talent and firepower to kind of survive a lot of their mistakes. It's definitely a case though of Toronto being just a step ahead all around. That Leafs roster, yeah, they kind of have brain farts and sort of piss away leads. But as far as like a really well-rounded attack is concerned, that team is kind of like the model. They've got a pretty good balanced roster. I I think if the Jets want to be serious about the playoffs and make a genuine run, they have got to get like an Ekholm or a Savard. It's like it's something that they basically can't survive without, because the teams that are going to be waiting past here, Vegas, Colorado, all those teams are playing genuinely dominant hockey, and those are teams I don't want the Jets as is to face without some significant help.
Fair.
Going into the off season, a couple years ago, we saw Brandon Tanev have a great season, be an awesome depth player for the Jets, and then go off to Pittsburgh and get a very long-term deal, especially for a middle six forward. The Jets have another guy who's basically having a great contract year, UFA at the end of the year. Adam Lowry. Do you think they're gonna let him hit free agency and see if they can find an internal solution to replace him, or do you think they're going to maybe react to that what happened with Brandon Tanev and try and lock him up?
Lowry's a curious case because his dad is on the coaching staff, and traditionally he's not really been a high-scoring forward. This year he's like a half point per game or so, which caught me a little bit by surprise. But then again, with how high-scoring this division has been, and the kind of role that he plays, it does make a bit of sense. He's been like a very grindy forechecking forward who also just seems to like to smash the net. That's his big thing. I think a contract extension is possible. It probably won't happen until Seattle does their thing. I think Lowry, me comfortably, would be like $3.5 to $4 million for a couple of seasons. He's 27 though, and I think he's kind of getting up there in years, and I'd be a little worried about his style. He's had some injuries over the past couple of seasons, and like it's clear that he is still very good at what he does, maybe not quite as dominant as he used to be. And like I don't know if it makes a lot of sense to commit a lot of money to Adam Lowry, or if he wanted to bring back Stastny for like 1 to 2 seasons at like 5.5 or something, maybe hedge your bets on a bit of a higher cap hit for the short term. So Lowry is kind of a weird one. I think the Jets will try and make a signing of some sort, but if he wants like a bigger paycheck, he could probably get it outside Winnipeg.
Fair. That's fair. You got, it's gonna be an interesting offseason, especially especially when you got the Kraken there, and then you've got also you got Forbert and Pullman. I mean, I don't know if you bring them back or not. You got Trevor Lewis, who came in on a PTO, Nate Thompson, Adam Lowry, Matthew Perrault, and then Paul Stastny, which I guess that's such an interesting question what you do there, I guess, with Paul Stastny. I guess the other my final question, I guess, a couple of quick ones. I think one guy that has been a great story for the Jets this year has been Nikolai Ehlers. Dynamic this year, kind of scoring key goals at key times. Was a guy last year that had a bit of a playoff monkey on his back going into the qualifying round. What have you seen from him? And kind of one guy that's maybe for you is from your perspective is kind of flying under the radar for the Winnipeg Jets that we should pay attention to going forward.
Ehlers, always the most fun Jet to talk about. I think Ehlers has for a long time been Winnipeg's best play driving guy. He's somebody who knows at an instinctual level how to move the puck into dangerous areas. And he has the edge work. He's got the passing. He's got the IQ. I mean, he has basically every single tool set that you'd possibly want in an elite forward. And this year he's been tasked with like an incredible burden of having to carry a lot of the offensive load. But he's handled it marvelously. His shooting percentage is probably a little high, but this is a guy who definitely has an elite level shot. And I think the biggest thing with him is just like so many of these other Jets forwards, he's super smart. He knows where he needs to be. He gets to those spaces. The only thing that I think people don't really love about him is that he does kind of dive a lot, which is, he definitely likes taking drawing penalties and things like that. And then yesterday he actually had a shift in OT. He won the game, but on the shift, like the moment right before he scored, he was kind of lazy on the back check. And he said in an interview afterwards, I played like crap. And like he wasn't happy with his performance. So it's kind of interesting to see him recognize games where he maybe feels like he needs to take over more. Last night, Dubois kind of did, the second line's heavy work. And then in overtime, he probably got yelled at by Maurice for not really back checking. But I'd say that overall his season has been astoundingly good. As far as somebody who's going under the radar, it's one of the guys you've mentioned. Matthew Perrault this year has been like back to the Matty P of old. This guy, I thought he was kind of cooked because he's had so many injuries over the past couple of years. Perrault at his best is just a dude who understands, again, like Ehlers is a very smart player, intercepts passes, makes great plays, has a good shot, very dangerous down low in front of the goalie. But we lost a lot of that once he started getting injured. He was basically worth 2 to 4 penalty minutes every night, and that was about it. Now he looks like he's back in his prime form. And he's been a very, really helpful guy on the fourth line, because I think the fourth line, as is, probably would struggle to get out of its own end at times. But Perrault is just so good at basically everything of moving the puck. And he's been such a fun watch, and it's good to see him finally having a healthy season again.
Anything else we should ask, Sean? Or
I think I have one more question. It's at this point, going into next season, is Cole Perfetti on the starting roster?
Oh, I want to say yes. I feel like as he's gotten more confident with the Moose are like a tough team to evaluate because for the first 15 or so games, they basically had half of an ECHL lineup. I think with COVID and everything, the Jets really couldn't afford to put a lot of money on that roster. So Perfetti kind of got put through the ringer. He didn't really have a whole lot of really good teammates and line mates to work with in terms of skill players, which for a guy who plays a style of game that he does, he really relies on that. He's been forced to kind of learn to adapt, and I think he's done a pretty good job of it. Sometimes he does struggle to get involved in play, but overall I definitely see a lot of improvement, and I could see him getting a third line role. With how he plays, I wonder if they start him out as a wing. I know long term they've always talked about him as a second line center, maybe eventually Scheifele's replacement. It'll be interesting to see because he's at times centered different lines. They've also put him out wide. They basically just throw him everywhere and see what kind of sticks. He's been really good on the power play, at least, so that's one thing that we know we can rely on him for. But as far as even strength play, I think it'll take him a little bit to get used to the NHL level, but I could see him getting a couple of games at least next season, probably, maybe 10, 15, depending on how they want to do the ELC thing.
right. We got a final question from the chat. What about Logan Stanley?
Stanley is a fun one. When he was drafted, I was kind of frustrated because I think the way that the Jets acquired that pick, they gave up a lot for that pick. And obviously players taken after that were Sam Girard, Alex DeBrincat. And Stanley basically had a world of expectations upon his shoulder, which were just never going to be fair. I will say that as he's developed as a pro, he's been pretty decent. And, barring last night, over the rest of this year, he's had a really good start to his NHL career. I think he's going to be a very reliable third pairing defender, somebody who doesn't have a really high end skill set, but he just gets to the right spaces. He's a big hulking guy. He can block out shooting in passing lanes, and he likes to shoot a lot. He shoots way more than he probably should at times. He doesn't always hit the net, but as far as somebody who's definitely worked really hard to improve his game, I think Stanley is somebody that I wouldn't mind keeping around for the third pairing, unless Seattle for some reason tries for him. But I think he's been pretty decent this year.
There's that 2016 draft again. It keeps coming. You got Dubois, you got Jesse Pujärvi, Olevi. We talk about Kachuk. It's a fascinating draft. Well, thanks for coming on, Harrison. How can people follow you? Where can people find you? How do we get your podcast?
So you guys can find me at HL Living Loco on Twitter, or at LO_Winnipeg Jets for the Locked On Winnipeg Jets podcast. I usually try to record every weekday. It does get a little bit hectic at times, so sometimes I put episodes on the weekend. But that's where you can find us.
Cool. Thanks for coming on. I know that you've got your own pregame show to get to, and then you've got Jets Oilers games. So, anything else you want to talk about before you go? Or
I just wanted to say thanks a ton for having me on, and I had a ton of fun.
Awesome. Well, we're glad to have you.
Thank you, Harrison.
Thank you, Harrison.
Thanks, guys. Have a great evening.
You too.
You too. Bye.
Bye. So Harrison from the Jets. So kind of a little bit of a divisional preview there, or review, recap, whatever that word is. Yeah. The Jets are certainly an interesting team because I don't know. It's one of those things that this division is still, quite frankly, pretty wild here. I mean, you've got they're 2 points behind the Leafs. The Leafs play the Flames this weekend. The Jets and the Oilers have a pretty big series. Pretty good chance right now that's a first round matchup. So you at least want to get home base for that, or probably want to get home ice advantage for that. So, but still fascinating because, I had the Jets finish second, and I feel good that they're sitting officially in second, but I don't know with this division, I still don't know. I think things can go topsy-turvy here. I personally don't think that we have everything settled here.
Oh, the North Division's far from settled. While we were talking with Harrison, I was checking out some of the advanced stats, the underlying numbers, just on the team basis on Natural Stat Trick, and the Jets are all over the place. Like, they are down by the Canucks for the shot shares. They're down by the Canucks for the expected goal rates, and it's just. But they're getting the saves, and they're not shooting at the top of the league either. So they've got it's just all over the place with the Jets, and the Scotia North Division is let's just call it the Chaos North Division at this point, because if the Canucks can win on Friday, that puts them into a tie for a playoff spot, and most of Canucks fans and media have written that season off. And yeah, it's still a long way to go. If you look at the games played and the point percentage parts of that, but it's far from over. And the Jets are only 2 points back of the Oilers for the first spot in the division as well. So yeah, I don't think it's far. And I could see way too many options on who makes the playoffs.
Yeah, and the Canucks, by the way, right now have the best record of the last 10 in this division at 7-3, and the worst right now, of course, is Ottawa at 3-5-2. But it's kind of a log jam. So I don't know. I know that people have kind of settled into where everybody is. I don't know. I could still see some chaos happening here, and one game to another, things can happen for sure.
I think we're going to see things either completely muddy up or clear up in the next 2 weeks. The Canucks have 4 games between now and middle of next week, and then they've got a full week off. So in 2 weeks' time, a lot of that games played discrepancy is going to be fixed, and we're going to see a lot more of where teams are. So transitioning to the Canucks, I would say that's the biggest thing right now for them, is they've got 4 gigantic games coming up, 2 against Montreal, 2 against Winnipeg, and if they can find a way to get 4 points out of Montreal, like, that completely resets a lot of the discrepancies in this division for the Canucks. It doesn't fix them all, but it definitely gets them to a point where even the most pessimistic fans have to start thinking that there's something there. But if they don't get the 4 points, they better hope they split it against Montreal, because if they lose both games against Montreal, I think that really, really that basically puts all but maybe the last nail in the coffin in for the Canucks to make the playoffs.
Even if they lose, I don't know about that.
You think about it, Kev. Like, they're 2 points back of the Habs, who are in 4th in the division. And if they lose both those games in regulation, That's 4 points. They're now 6 points back with, and Montreal's got games in hand. It just, and then depends on, and then what happens if Calgary beats Montreal? Toronto. Then Calgary's past Vancouver again. So it's just they need to find a way to at the very least make a split out of those two Toronto games or two Montreal games. If not, I think it just makes it way too steep of a mountain to climb this late in the season. Until their math, I forgive the optimism. Look,
but
if you go on Canucks Twitter and you go like I'm the most optimistic. I'm one of the more optimistic Canucks fans. Like I get yelled at for being too optimistic. But you look at it and it's just once you have multiple teams to pass, that's when the mountain becomes way too steep this late in the season when you've just given away all that. So if they can find a way to split with Montreal and just stay 2 points back, and then go into Winnipeg and they're going to have to at least split that again. But 500 hockey isn't going to cut it. They need to win 6 to 7 games out of 10 going to make it. And if they can do that, great. But the biggest thing is they need to actually start playing hockey in front of Demko and stop relying on Demko to carry them through till May when the playoffs into the playoffs. They can't do it. It's not sustainable. As much as we want to be able to celebrate these wins, when it's a win where you've given up a 2-goal lead to the worst team in the division, and you've relied on Thatcher Demko to basically steal games for you for the most part in the month of March. You need to turn things around. Yeah, they've done it a lot without Pettersson, and that's huge. I think that's something that doesn't get talked about during this stretch. Is they've done the majority of it without Elias Pettersson. If it wasn't for the fact that this season, if they were a little closer in games played and they were kind of fighting it out, I think there would be a lot more optimism in Canucks land, and there'd be a lot more willingness to give that narrative more room to breathe. But unfortunately, it's a tall mountain to climb for the Canucks to get in there. But if they can continue winning at this rate, they will get there. But they need to turn their team play around.
Yeah, I understand that. I guess my point is I'm still sorry. I'm not sold. I know that everything looks hunky dory sometimes in Edmonton, but I'm not sold on the Oilers. The Flames, they are inconsistent, and the Habs. Some people have them as the second best in this division. I still think that there's some consistency issues there. I mean, you're right. They need to. I'm not saying that the Canucks should not lose or should not. That it's just not it's not going to be a problem. But I still like this division is so flawed. It's like even we heard from Harrison. The Winnipeg Jets are the second best team in this division right now, and he's like, they're not that good. Hey, did you hear a glaring glow of the Winnipeg Jets from Harrison? I really didn't.
Yeah, I get that. It's just realistically right now they've got to stay ahead of Calgary. If they don't, then that really hurts their chances. They've got to find a way to make up ground against Montreal. So that's why you got a sweep in these two games would be huge. If not, you can't lose ground. So you've got to find a way to split it. You got to find a way to get 2 points. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. It's so hard for me to like try and be analytical about it, but still throw the fan hat on. Because last night I cheered. I was super happy that the Canucks found a way to win. Found a way to win seems to lose all meaning to people who are too hypercritical about the team sometime. Again, they're doing this all without Elias Pettersson. They're doing this without their franchise forward. They had to move JT Miller to the center. They're down the last couple games. They've done it with being down a couple regular forwards. Now, yes, a couple of those regular forwards are overpaid fourth liners, but still, you're still having to pop players in who aren't regular, who haven't been comfortable to play regularly anyways.
Yeah, it just feels to me, I guess, look, I'm not going to sit here and say the Canucks have played well the last 10 games. Like, this has been the Thatcher Demko show, and that's why right now I have him as, like, he's playing the best. He's like, if I was Kevin Woodley in this, I would probably say that Thatcher Demko is playing the best right now in this division. And it's the 5 play with the Canucks it's not good. I mean, I honestly last night JT Miller delivered a ham and pineapple on pizza to Brady Tkachuk in apt time, like, for Brady Tkachuk. And if he figured out that there was more time on the clock, that may have been 2 points lost for the Canucks last night. So I'm not going to sit here and proclaim that the Canucks are playing very well, but am I going to get myself in trouble here? Yeah, let's get in trouble. I just think that there's some people in this base that, how do I word this? They're more interested in their critical intellectual thought than the fact that the team is winning. Wins are great. Like, look, this isn't a style point league. It's a point-driven, results-driven oriented league. The object of the game is to win. And if you're winning, great. And I'm not going to sit here and also not proclaim and not deny that I'm not a fan of the shootout, but that's a whole other entire point. We'll talk about that another time. But they're winning. And that's all you need to do. Like, this isn't style points. And I just think that let's celebrate Demko here. Let's celebrate, I don't know if I'm wording this right.
You're going down the road that I was going to go down as well there, Kev. I've been very frustrated with how some of the fans and media have been acting on this. It's a win. Celebrate the win. You don't need to go out 15 minutes after a win and spew out a tweet thread that basically shits on people who celebrated the win. Are trying to be positive. Now, there's some absolute dickheads out there too who are toxic positive, and they're just they're basically doing the exact same thing and shitting on people for being critical, because that's all they're doing. It's not they're being negative; they're being critical.
Yeah,
but I understand why. It's just pick your time. In my opinion, pick your time. Being a hockey fan, for most people, is a very emotional thing. It's an emotional investment in a team. And 10, 15 minutes after or even the evening of, sometimes, it takes some people the whole evening to come down from either raging about a loss or talking about or celebrating a win. And especially when you've got to win and you're coming out with everything about, like, well, this isn't sustainable. You can't celebrate this win because it was just Demko. Like, please pick your time. People will listen to you if everything you're saying is correct, but they're only going to listen when they're willing to listen.
Yeah, and I guess to me, like, it's the tough balance, because I mean, obviously some of these guys are they're paid to, and everyone has an opinion, and you want to evaluate it in a very honest manner. But the fact of the matter is they won. Let's take the win and go home, and I think the other part of this, Sean, that I think is frustrating me is sort of let's go back to Tyler's rant on JT Miller, when that whole first, there's a section of the Canucks Twitter that actually wants this team to lose. They feel like no matter what, a win is wrong. How dare you win? Now you're not going to get this lottery pick. Just calm down. Winning builds confidence. And when this team starts to kind of get going, when Pettersson gets back and they get everything else back, kind of get their game back here, it's going to be fine. There's going to be games that, hey, look, I bet you there's a number of teams that would be very happy if Thatcher Demko stole them a game or two.
Yeah, I think, well, part of it is I think a lot of the fan base is fed up with this current regime. And the only way they see a change coming is if the team bottoms out. And I think if this was any other year, I think Benning's gone, because with fans in the stands, there would have already been boos and fire Benning chants for a few games, and literally accolades would have sitting there, not tweeting, sitting there and going, "Oh shit, I have to make a change." Now you're just having the Twitter wars and the social media wars and everyone arguing on when people with podcasts and radio and all that. So it's not as tangible for the ownership to make the move. And I think fans are just fed up with this regime, and they want a change.
Well, I also think if this team was winning at home, there would be fire Benning chants. There really would be. There would be people like, I can't believe they're winning. Fire Benning. They're winning.
No, no. It's not that. We're Canucks fans aren't that ridiculous. The reason people are angry at Benning is because of it's 7 years. He's saying we'll be competitive in 2 more. He's in a flat cap world. We're capped out, yes, but a lot of that is because of contracts he's given out that have really hampered their ability to do anything. He's made decisions where and there's a bunch of other things too. There's the communication with players, media, fans, all is just an absolute mess with Benning, Aquilini, and all that. The Canucks fans need a change. They need a regime change so that we can move on. Right now, we're bickering amongst each other because the on ice product isn't selling hope, and isn't selling success right now. Now, 7 out of 9 is going to change that. Hopefully, maybe they are starting to sell success. But the fact is, there's no hope with there's very little hope with how people feel that about the ability of Jim Benning and co to manage this team going forwards. When you've got Pettersson coming up needing a new deal, Hughes coming up needing a new deal, Thatcher Demko's making a new case for a bigger deal than we probably would have thought. There's no confidence that they can take this team, which has a core that you can build around, and turn it into a contender. We just talked about the Winnipeg Jets. They had one run to the conference finals, and then they had to blow it up. They lost their whole blue line, and now they're struggling to try and rebuild that blue line. That's the worry that this fan base has, and that's why we're seeing all these hypercritical takes, and they all have good thoughts behind them and everything. The issue with how they're being presented is it's basically shitting on people who aren't as fully they're a different type of fan. They're a more emotional fan. They like to celebrate wins. Doesn't matter if it's a win in April versus a win in October, a win versus a win in a win when you're battling for a playoff spot versus a win when you're miles ahead, like the Canucks were in 2010 and 2011, or a win when you're a basement dweller. You don't want to turn on the TV and watch them lose. You don't want to go out to a game and watch them lose, hang out with your friends and watch them lose. Like, we can't do some of that stuff right now, but you don't want to watch your team lose. Spend your time that is valuable and watch them lose. You want to watch them win. And we should be able to celebrate that without being shit on for being to celebrate it. But you also shouldn't be shitting on the people who want better, who want more, who want to be able to have this team turn into a contender, be a perennial playoff team, a perennial team that you think they have a chance to win the cup. I get both sides. All I see is a lot of it is personal mudslinging, I think, or trying to make a name for yourself. And yes, I would love for us to make our name for ourselves, but we're not going to do it that way. We're going to do it our own way and talk rationally about things for the most part. Devin will argue with me about how rational some of my takes are, but but it's like right now it's a very frustrating time to be a Canucks fan because you don't have hope with the GM. You don't have hope with the owners just trolling fans now. Some of those tweets that he comes out with after the games, they're just full on trolling tweets now.
I think he's outstanding. I you know what? I know, like, I think he's taken some lessons from Elliot Friedman, and it's just, I'm just going to troll the fans. I'm just going to go in there. I'm just going to troll. And as Tyler has tweeted too, it's not like he's not looking at his mentions. He doesn't give a care. He's just trolling. He's trolling. It's awesome. I think it's highly entertaining because everyone just gets up in arms when he tweets. It's just so, like, I think he knows what he's doing. I think that their social media team, the Aquilini social media team, knows what they're doing. It's not like a long, lengthy thing. He knows that this is the way to communicate to the fan base. He knows that he'll get a reaction, and he just does it. Works every time. I applaud Aquilini's social media team. I think they deserve an absolute round of applause because they know exactly what they're doing. All they're doing is trying to create engagement, and Canuck fans are responding.
Yeah. But moving off of that and into the actual on-ice product that I enjoy talking about so much more, they made a waiver claim this week and picked up Jimmy Vesey. And with Tanner Pearson looking like he may be out after leaving last night's game with an injury, it's good. We're also looking at what is it? It said Roussel's hasn't played the last couple games. Beagle's not on the road trip. They just welcomed back Tyler Mott, thank God. Like, they need that bottom six needs him. But Jimmy Vesey is going to be a nice addition to the depth. And especially if we, like, I've talked about this on here. I've talked about this with other people, other Canucks fans. If we want people to have if we want the Canucks to have the depth that they've sorely lacked, they've got two good lines, but the bottom six is an absolute gong show. So if they want to do that, maybe it's time to keep JT Miller at center. And Jimmy Vesey adds to that winger depth that could potentially help them do that.
He's an interesting case. I mean, it's a good gamble. Wish Devin was on here to see what happened from his perspective in Toronto. He's bounced around a lot. Just doesn't seem to. So hopefully it works here in Vancouver. So I don't think it hurts. Is he better than what they have? Yes. So that works. And I think put JT Miller. I think JT Miller at center, I think, works well. We've talked about that. You got your pairs there, and then I think that will improve your top six once Pettersson gets back. And getting Tyler Mott back, that's a godsend. And I know that Tanner Pearson hasn't been producing, but I don't think he's going to be a loss in that lineup for sure. Miller at center. I think that's a good thing for sure. I think that we've talked about that. Just adds to the depth. And
it adds to the depth. And one thing I've from what I've watched of the Canucks this year, and even going to last year for a little bit, I feel that Pettersson's gotten a little too comfortable with JT Miller and letting JT Miller control the play and have the puck too much. Pettersson's a better player. He should be the focus of the line that he's on with puck possession. And I want to see them separated just to see what would happen with that as well. Because I think as much Pettersson is a franchise-changing, franchise level forward, whether or not he's a true center is still up for debate because of how they've brought him in on these first three seasons. The first season he played center pretty regularly, but when they brought in JT Miller started taking away some of those responsibilities with face-offs and probably some of the defensive zone assignments as well because of that. So I want to see PD without his safety blanket in JT Miller, and if you put JT Miller in the middle, that accomplishes the depth issue as well as to help put a spark in Pettersson and to help him take that next step that we all are waiting for him to take.
Yeah, I think my lines are Pettersson, Höglander, Besser. I think that would work well. Horvat, Pearson, Virtanen, and then I'd like to see a Miller, Mott, Gaudette kind of as your third line, and then you have your money line, a mixed bag of things in the fourth line. Look, I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm a big Jake Virtanen fan, but he seems to be playing reasonably well with Bo Horvat, so I don't think that you need to break that up. I just think Höglander with Pettersson and Besser, I think Höglander could probably do a lot of create some space for PD to do PD-like things. That's the way I would go on that. But
I want to see Höglander and Miller stick together. I just think that they've got the ability to. I feel like they've got the ability to build some chemistry and have their dog on the bone mentality work well and create a line that could be an absolute menace to play against. And then at that point, you're putting Gaudette up there with PD and Besser, and I think that would be okay. I think Gaudette's shown the ability to be the puck retrieval guy and then get the puck and then get to a spot for a shot. So I think it would work with that trio as well.
Yeah. In terms of JT Miller's stats, here as we just have a look at that as I pull that up here in the regular season. Face-off percentage 57, 27 points, 8 goals, 19 assists, 27 points, 57%. Now, I guess the other thing with Pettersson too is how long do you keep him out? Do you bring him back if he's ready in Winnipeg, or do you wait until after the week is done?
Well, he's not on the road trip, so
I know
the logistics are. Yeah, if he's ready, you play him. You need him, especially if you come out of Montreal with at least a split. If you come out with Montreal at least a split and PD's ready, you play him. This isn't where you're saving him for quote unquote the playoffs. Like, no, you have to put your best players out there if they're ready to play.
All right, some were wondering about that. That's why I brought that up as well. Other than that, I think. Yeah, we've kind of covered the Canucks here. The Flames, they got their first loss under the Darryl Sutter regime. Not a pretty loss for sure. 3-0 early, 3-1 after the second period, and then I don't know. Okay, this is just me, but when the guy wearing number 97 is on the ice, my thought is you don't go to the other end of the ice to go cover that guy. You cover that guy 97, maybe protect him, and you don't have all four going over there and leave 97 open to wind up and blast. But I have a different defensive concept. I don't know. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe there's a brilliant strategy there.
No, I think Darryl Sutter was probably telling the team that in just a little more eloquence and hockey talk than what you did there, Kev.
Yeah, I think he probably spoke more Devinese. I think he was closer to what Tyler's dad would not approve of, and Devin language than what I just said. But
yeah,
but I think one of the things that's coming out here is Flames fans. I know that you're not doing this, but there's a tendency for some to do it. Maybe some media. 2004 was 17 years ago. 17 years ago. We're not the same team. We're not in the same year as 2004. Let's stop the comparisons. It's not the same. And even Darryl Sutter said it. Like, he said this team is more talented than 04, but not as mature. So I think that one of the things that Darryl Sutter is coming out of this is there is some work to do with this team. And it's a lot of it has to do with the word that we've used, the maturity part of this team it's just still not there. And he needs to work on that. That still needs some work. And
he still has to figure out. It's only 4 games in. He's still got to figure out who he's going forwards with, who's going to be his players, because I still think there's major changes that need to happen to this roster to go forward. Darryl Sutter's not going to turn this roster do what Mike Sullivan and Craig Berube have done in the past and turn a good team into a great team. I think this team still has some major holes. I know Devin's going to yell at me again for bringing up the right side of the Flames forward lines, but that's a big hole. They need to figure out how they're starting to take away some of that some of the power play time and some of the time from Giordano, but they need to find a way to keep doing that and get him down to a level where he can be more effective, because he's no longer a top pair defenseman.
He's not a top 4 defenseman, but here's the problem. I don't know if Juuso Välimäki has been consistently a top 4 defenseman yet. I think he's getting there. But I think that that's part of the problem is you almost need to play Giordano as much as you are, because you're not sure that Välimäki's ready. Shillington and Nesterov, I think, will be flipping back and forth. And Rasmus Andersson, I think it's great that they took him off the first power play. I think it's great he's on the second power play. I think that takes a lot of pressure off of him, and I think Noah Hannafin will work better there. But I don't know. Like, I think I said this on Twitter last night. I think the Flames deeply missed Eric Gustafsson. I think that was the biggest loss of the offseason for the Flames was Eric Gustafsson. He was a power play guy. He can play both ends of the ice. He could do a lot of these things, and he probably would have been a guy that could take a lot of the ice away from Giordano. That needs to happen. It's just I think the Flames. I think looking back at this offseason, the Flames got a little too wide-eyed about Juuso Välimäki, and they got all a little bit excited. And I don't think he's been as consistent as they wanted him to be.
No, but he's still been playing pretty well. He's played better than Giordano over for the most part this season. And I think it's just they need to let him continue to develop. And they've got Giordano's replaced 2 really good young left side defensemen to replace Giordano with. They just need to give Valimaki some more playing time. You have to remember, this Valimaki missed a whole year of hockey.
Yeah,
like he's coming off a major knee injury, and he's looking really good in his first year after that. And like it's a lot. I really think that he's going to have. I think they've got the players in place. Then they've got Connor Mackey coming up on the left side too. Yep. They've got the players in house that are going to replace Giordano. It's just it's learning. Coaches learning to trust these younger players. Hannafin's starting to get the more ice time under Daryl Sutter. Valimaki has to prove to Daryl Sutter that he's a better option than Mark Giordano at this point, and I think it's going to happen. I have more confidence in Daryl Sutter being willing to pull that trigger than Jeff Ward would have.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with. And forward wise, I think Daryl Sutter is. This is one thing that Daryl Sutter. He's so This is a guy that's just so underrated in the media. Like, he knows what he's saying. He's got to kind of. He knows how to speak to this media. We've talked about this before, but I think he's making sure Tree is aware. He said it last. He said there's only 3 teams in this division that you can run and gun with, and we're not one of them. And I think he's saying we need to up this top 6 forward group. This has got to be a priority. And I know Tree Living is trying, but that is one of the things. Like, he basically said this team is not as offensively talented as you think. And I think that I took that as a little bit of a shot to Tree too. It's like, I don't think that you thought that this team was offensively talented, and I don't. No, they're not. Not in the way that Daryl Sutter wants them to be.
Ideally, they need 2 top 6 right wingers.
Yep.
I think they've got someone who could be that. Again, it's in Andrew Mangiapane. But I think he's better suited right now to be an absolute, like, an elite third liner. And on a good team, he would be.
Yeah.
The issue right now is that they've got Brett Ritchie playing on the right wing for the Monahan-Goudreau line, and then is Mangiapane on the right wing with Lindholm and Tkachuk?
No, it's Lindholm, Tkachuk, Dubé, Backlund, Lucic,
Dubé. Okay,
and Mangiapane.
Dubé is another option, but again, they're like on a true Stanley Cup contending team. Dubé and Mangiapane are third line wingers, and that's what you need. So they need to find a way to upgrade that right side on the forwards. And I think that, again, that I'm okay. I think they've got the right blue line. I just think they need to start relying on Valimaki more.
Yeah, I think. Well, if this was normal times, I think Valimaki probably would have started the season in Stockton to make sure that he was in game shape, and I think he probably would have been brought up
real quick,
quickly. Yeah, but I think he needed to get his legs, to be fair to him. And
now the one thing I want to say about the game since Sutter took over and is that one of the reasons Daryl's probably saying that they're not as offensively gifted as possible as everyone thought is what was considered the first line for years, Monahan and Goudreau pairing with whoever. Right now, Monahan and Goudreau are at the very bottom of this lineup in terms of expected goal share. Looks like they're even at the bottom in terms of like creating expected goals. So like, it's just, I think that maybe they're just trying to figure out how they work inside the Sutter system, but that's not necessarily a good thing if you've got Sutter who's supposed to be able to come in and get the best of all these players.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you remember that discussion we had in the bubble with Dan and I said that Monahan wasn't the number 1 line, and he was like, no, they're the number 1 line. I'm like, no, they're not the number 1 line. I'm sorry. They're not.
Yeah, the Flames don't necessarily. I wouldn't say the Flames have a true number one line right now. I think they've basically got with Tkachuk and Lindholm. I think have started to take over that, but they don't have one of those like bona fide number one lines that like you look at, say Winnipeg or even Winnipeg. They've got two solids. Like Vancouver when they put the Lotto line together, Boston when they put the Perfection line together. They've got. Right now, Calgary's got two really good when they're on two really good top six lines, and they have to figure out how to get both of them running at the same time.
Yeah, that's going to be the issue. Now, I guess the other thing that Sutter said, I guess I don't think everybody was. It was sort of a fascinating thing, but historically, I know this is I guess where we bring back 2004, 2011, 2012. Darryl Sutter doesn't pull goalies. And he never did with Kiprusoff. He never did with anybody. And people were like, "Why are you not pulling Markstrom?" I don't pull the goalies.
Yeah, to quote Darryl Sutter, I don't pull goalies.
It's a fascinating argument. I mean, I think Markstrom. I think there would have been a lot of goalies who are like, "Can you get me out of here?" And yeah, that's an interesting way to do that.
Going forwards with the goalies, you got a back to back here.
I think you go Rittich.
You think Darryl's going to split it?
Yeah, I think you go Rittich Friday, Markstrom Saturday. That's the way I would do it.
That's how I would do it as well. You want to have the fresher team in front of Rittich, and then see if Markey can steal it on Saturday. But you're playing against the same team, so both teams are tired. So,
well, the Leafs are going to be fresh and on a losing streak. That's the one interesting caveat. And the other thing, again, we miss you, Devin. Will be the first game with Darryl Sutter, with the Jake Muzzin puck flip, and you wonder if that game is going to have that firework. I don't know if it is.
I hope so. I really hope so. After getting embarrassed by the Oilers last game, you've got Darryl's first game under Darryl Sutter against the Leafs when everything fell apart for the Flames with the Muzzin puck flip and Tkachuk losing his mind and then being told to calm down by his team. I think they need to find a way to make it a brawl. If they can make that game a brawl, then they have a chance. If not, and they try and the Leafs skill is gonna chop them up.
Yeah, for sure. I hope that there's some fireworks. I'm not super confident that there's going to be. That's I guess the question I have about that, but that will be interesting as well. We'll talk about that throughout the week. The other news, I guess, to get through here is Ralph Krueger was mercifully relieved to be away from the Buffalo Sabres. I honestly, humans lose jobs and all of that, and I get it. I almost wanted, like, I know we can't, but if there was a person that needed a hug, Ralph Krueger needs a hug and deserved it. And I don't know if he'll ever get another job in the National Hockey League again as a head coach. That's really unfortunate what happened there. I think that this is more part organization than it is Ralph Krueger, but it was a terrible situation.
Yeah, tire fire, man. That's what Buffalo is, man. There was the Canucks expansion cousins are making life as a Canucks fan look a lot less dire.
Yeah,
but it was way overdue. They need to do something because it's just whatever's going on in Buffalo isn't working, and they need to switch something up. Although, again, it goes deeper there too. Like, Canucks fans are angry about Aquilini, but at least Aquilini cares. At least Aquilini has passion towards this team. The the Buffalo owners, the Pagulas, I don't think they do. I really, everything I've heard is like they're so focused on the Bills. That's all they care about is the Bills. And the Sabres are just like this little side project that no one really cares.
And that's really unfortunate. Like, I get the NFL, like, don't get me wrong, I get the NFL as a money driver, and it would be, and especially, the Bills season that they had, it was a great year and things are really on the up in Buffalo. But that Buffalo Sabre hockey market is a really strong hockey market. And it's not like this is like some small schmuck town in the middle of nowhere. It's a pretty passionate hockey market that deserves better than what they've got. I mean, like if you
I would say two of the biggest most passionate fan bases in this in the States in terms of like being in the middle of hockey country, Buffalo and Minnesota have had like barely much to cheer for. And it just sucks because those fans deserve better. Like they're basically honorary Canadians in my opinion in terms of them being that into hockey. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. They do deserve better in Buffalo.
Yeah, and I also think and from an ownership perspective, you would want to. There's money to be made there. There is absolutely money to be made there if you put a really good, solid team on the ice. And I mean, part of this too is the division that they got put in because of COVID. I mean, it's hard to beat the Islanders, Washington, Pittsburgh, Rangers. All of that, they're in a really tough division, to be fair, but
they're the best division in the league right now, and they're the worst team in the league.
Yeah, and I mean, one team beat another team 9-0 without coaches. So I mean, that is, yeah.
Well, I mean, they had what the Rangers had their AHL coach and assistant GM on the bench.
Yeah,
along with someone else.
Yeah.
But that was just ridiculous. Like, just like what happened? How does Philly lose that bad to a team that just lost their coaching staff to COVID protocols?
Yeah. Anything else we need to get into?
No, I think we got some interesting topics planned for Sunday. We're going to talk a little bit about Hockey Night in Canada and the future we hope to see from them. We've got, and in conjunction with that, I'll bring up what you posted in our group chat to the Amazon deal for NFL and what that could mean for the NHL going forwards as well, because one of the big things in that ESPN deal for the NHL is streaming. They're going to have their games on ESPN Plus down in the States. The ones that are posted are being broadcast by ABC and ESPN nationally.
Yeah, it's sort of it's going to be kind of I think a mid-season kind of review. What's working with Hockey Night in Canada? What's not? And yeah, we'll recap the Flames and the Leafs. I almost said the Flames and Canadians. The Canucks are playing the Canadians. The Flames are playing the Leafs.
Yeah.
Whatever else. We also will have next week, we're going to have the Soda Pod on, as we're starting to move south. Some birds move south for the winter. We move south for the spring, and we're going to start looking at some of the other divisions and get a sense of what's going on with the Minnesota Wild in the West division. And we're going to see if we can get one of those Minnesota Wild retro jerseys that,
the Subway jerseys.
The Subway jerseys. Yeah, but we're going to start doing that as well. And we got a whole bunch of other things. And I'm just going to ask this. What do you guys want us to talk about? I think sometimes we just assume we're talking with ourselves. What do you want to talk about? Ask us questions. We're good-looking people. Well, Sean's good-looking. And Devin's good-looking. Whatever. But we'll leave it there for now. How do we follow you?
I am Beardy Canuck 03 on Twitter.
Devin, who we miss, Gordhouse09. Tyler TNOBLE. Schneids, who, if he's on, we're gonna have to talk about songs.
Yeah, what at least in the Canadian markets, local bands would be the would make the songs for the team. And how did I get so good looking? It's
I think he's asking me that though, but I don't know. I don't know. Who are you asking? And then TNOBLE, and then IMKVOLE, podcast_hockey, Facebook.com, hockey podcast, YouTube.com, the hockey podcast, where we're at Bobrovsky of subscribers. And we will talk to you all very soon. Bye for now.